Yeah, I'm really excited to share with you all the journey that I've taken to do this game. It's called Guilt and Glory. I think some of you might have seen it, some of you haven't, but it's a very casual game. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you what the game is about. All right, I'm going to play the trailer and mute myself. All right, so that's the trailer. Without giving you away too much of the game, because that's not the point of this. The point of this sharing is really just to look into process of making a game, especially with Unity. But let me just talk about indie game development. Being an indie, you've probably heard a lot, especially when you're playing a lot of indie games. Basically, indie just means that you don't have any money coming from another conglomerate like a publisher. It's all your own pocket. So if you're a studio, that means there's a bunch of people raising their own money to build the game. So if you're solo, that means I'm forking out my own money to build the game. So I'm paying the artist myself. I'm using my own time. I'm not paying myself, kind of thing. So that's basically what indie is, as opposed to having a backing by a publisher, which allows you to do a lot more, but also imposes some creative limitations or some expectations and stuff that you don't have any movement around deadlines. So being an indie is sometimes can be a blessing, sometimes can be a curse, where you build a game that you're never gonna want to release because eventually it's your baby, you want it to be perfect and stuff. So hello, you all know me. I'm Anthony. 7 years ago, I think some of you might know that I came from a game development background. I used to build games for kids, starting from Disney and then eventually going out to an independent game studio making virtual world. I'm quite excited about making kids games. If you look at the game just now in the trailer, there's no blood and nothing like that. So I just still love the concept of kids friendly, but not so kiddie like what I used to do. Tried a couple of indie game development in the past where they never really see the light of day. Apart from Flux, the one on the top right, I tried to release it on Congregate. Only a handful of people playing it. I didn't really market it. So hopefully this is going to be my first time releasing something on Steam and actually finishing the project. Today, what I want to talk about is really not about why I want to create a game. It's not about selling the idea that, everyone should make a game, but it's really about how. Knowing how, I think, is really important for me as a motivation. Someone actually demystified the process of making games probably about 15 years ago to me, and it makes it a little bit more digestible as to the possibilities for me to make games myself, kind of thing. What I'm not going to cover is low-level stuff about why to build a game, and it's not about making a hit game, because obviously I don't know how to make a hit game, otherwise I would have been rich by now. And also I'm not gonna talk about how to market a game. Again, that's because I'm still learning too. But what I'm actually going to talk about is the process of what's involved in making a game. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the ideation looks like and prototyping and how important prototyping is before you make any games. And then we'll go into how you want to set the tone for your game, borrowing ideas from others to quickly go through your concept. And then eventually I want to stop right at the let's dive in. So we're going to cover that, but then I'm not going to cover the make it shine because I have probably about 92 slides to cover, but we're going to stop on the third point. Hopefully I can make it. So let's talk about prototypes. As you know, we work in a software development company. It's the same in games. So you want to build a prototype to quickly test and validate your game ideas, your gameplay mechanics, your control inputs and stuff like that, and see whether it's something that people would like playing, and then also to gauge your players' reactions and behaviors. And I'll talk a little bit about this more in the next slide as well. And also to catch some feedback early, whether you have any holes in the gameplay. Yeah, who needs a game design document? These days, I rarely heard that term anymore, unless you're working for EA or big companies like Ubisoft, where they have Bibles of what their game should look like, but not for indie development, really. In regards to the prototype, the origin story was that it came out of a 48 hours hackathon project between my friend and I. The two of us quickly built a game from scratch, including the artwork, the sound design, the music and stuff, that within 48 hours. And minus the sleep, probably about 4 hours sleep each day. That gives us about 40 hours, which is plenty of time to build a prototype. The result was a playable game in its own right. Pixel art action battle game, very similar to Guilds and Glory. This was built in JavaScript HTML5. It is there in itch.io. I've released it a couple of months ago, I think. You can go and try it if you want. I'll share the link as well. After the prototype is done, a lot of people were actually excited by it and played a lot. They keep saying that, you should release this on mobile, you should release this on Steam. It makes me kind of like, I want to release this, but not in this state. I wouldn't be happy with it. So let's talk about concepting and moodboarding. The concept is already there. The prototype already gave me the concept. But then what about the art style? I wasn't happy with pixel art. So I looked at what is the potential to go 3D from here. So I looked at a bunch of assets and I look at whether it's serious medieval or whether it's cute. And then eventually sort of narrowed down into this kind of style. The left one is an MMORPG that I can't remember the name, but it used to be my favorite of all time. So the style that I want to go with is cute, chibi style, but still very lush, vibrant, and colorful. The reason why I want to share this is because there's so much things out there that you can utilize, good quality stuff. I think it's such a waste to start from scratch. Even for the characters that I'm using for Guilds and Glory, on the bottom left, that's what I bought. It was only for $15 or something like that from Unity Asset Store. Obviously, I'm not happy with that, but that's good enough. That's achieving probably about 75% of the character style that I want. But to go 100%, I will show you what I did with the art and character and stuff like that. All right, so let's dive in. Now let's talk about how to make the game itself. This is the best time to build games because the engine is there, the amount of content that you can use is there. So we're going to go through each topic. Let's talk about art. The first thing is the 3D model. Unlike 2D, where you bought 2D assets and then it's pretty much take it or leave it. If you don't like it, you can't really just paint on top. If you bought a 3D model that you like and you want to modify it, you can. And in this case, that's what I did. I'm using 3D package called Blender. If you look at the 3D model, it's so simple. Like there's not a lot of polygon counts and stuff like that. So Blender is very, very good with modeling for polygonal stuff. 3D modeling is basically a process where you took vertices or edges and faces, and that's enough for you to play around with. And you don't have to know advanced tool. In this case, I'm showing you what extrusion looks like, but you don't have to use it. You can just transform vertices and stuff like that. I purchased a pack that comes with 3 models. And then I created 3 original other models and modified the other 3 to make up the 6 characters that I have in the game. And all just through basic tools like modifying vertices and faces and stuff like that, nothing fancy. And then once you are ready with the model, once your model is ready to paint, so we go into what is called texturing, putting textures onto your model. So it used to be gray, now I painted green. Green is so striking in the eye. If you have any seams, for example, if you have any imperfections in your textures, that there's areas that you haven't painted, because it's very, very rare that you use a complete green in any textures. In this case, I'm using my iPad Pro connected to my computer, just painting on top of the 3 characters. Now, let me pause here a little bit. I can, for example, choose to paint on the left side, which is what is called the unwrapped UV texture. UV unwrapping is a concept where it's similar to origami. Imagine you have built this origami character on the right side, and then you unwrap it and it becomes like a sheet of paper. In Blender or in any software package, you can build something and then it will automatically unwrap, attempt its own best approximation. There will be overlapping vertices and overlapping edges and stuff. And that's where you come in and manually do this. In this case, on the left side, I've already cleaned it up. So it looks pretty nice, pretty even, pretty decipherable. I could then choose to paint on the left, but not yet. In this phase, I would call this very rough painting. So what I want to do is just put colors, and eventually I export this to Photoshop, which is a better tool. See how I can actually incorporate photos. I download some photos on belts and stuff like that, and instead of painting the belt myself, I just put the belt there. And then it's built into Photoshop where you can actually load 3D models and paint on it as well, just like you would in Blender. So the left is what I call the concept. That's my own painting. I'm not a great painter, but I can paint a little bit to the concept. And then I send it off to the artist. And then the artist paint it into like a completely different, beautiful thing, right? Once that comes back to me, I need to go back into the model, put it in perspective, and see whether there are any problems and adjust accordingly. These kind of problems, for example, with the priest, there's overlapping here, broken UV maps, it's not paintable there. There will be seams in your character when you turn and then it doesn't look pleasant and stuff like that. This kind of overlapping UV means that when you paint here, it's going to affect this area, but also the other part of the character as well. So those kind of things that you need to check and keep working with the artist. Now, if you don't use the artist, you can do all this by yourself. It just takes time, but if it brings you enjoyment, by all means. It makes so much difference between the concept until you get the final. This concept, probably I had it for about 2 months before it becomes this. And that was okay. That was good enough to show people, because after all, you want to concentrate on the gameplay first before you invest a lot on the art, just to find out that, oh, it's not a cool game to play anyway. All right, let's move on to animation. What you've built in a textured model, they don't move. Everything is just static. You have to rig the character. That means you have to put bones into the character. So the body has a bone, which is not shown here. But imagine just like a human being, you have a backbone kind of thing. And then the head has a bone, the arms, and then the legs as well. Like arrow also has a bone. The rope of the arrow has a bone, the bow, I mean. That's called rigging. Essentially, we rig the character and then we animate the rig of the character to make the character move. But these days, you create an extra set of bones and connect it to the actual body or head bones, and you move the marionette bones. It's like moving the ventriloquist dummy, where you have strings attached to this X cross thing, and then you move the cross rather than manipulating each individual arm. Eventually, it becomes like this. So I came up with a set of animations for each character: walking, attacking, and then back to walking. So once you have this animation, right, now we're starting to go into Unity. There is a finite state machine system that's called Mechanism, which is very easy to use or very visual. So what you do is you define this individual state, idle, walk, and then you have this start of the attack animation sequence and then the attack. But you see the error, right? If I'm in idle, I can go to attack straight away, or I can go to walk. Walk, I can go back to idle. But once I go to attack start, it can't go back to walk. It has to finish the attack sequence. So this shows you like a couple of transitions between each animation. Now, the cool thing about Mechanism is that it takes care of the transition. So if you are walking and then suddenly you started to attack, it manages so it doesn't jump between animation states abruptly. It deforms the animation between the before and after states really nicely. And this section of the video will show you that you can inspect the state of the animation while you're playing the game. So let's have a look. So it says, now it's attacking, back to, now walk on, walking, walking, walking. And then as soon as it attacks, it goes to attack start, and goes to attack, end the attack, and then walking again. So that's what Mechanism looks like. Now you're working on a higher level rather than codes, which is great. Environment. Environment is probably one of the things that a lot of people are sharing assets, because it's one of those things that given enough permutations or combinations, nobody's gonna, oh, that tree is from this same plugin library that I use. You probably can find similar trees in different games. But if you combine enough different permutations from different libraries, what you have is quite unique. For Guild and Glory, I use 4 different assets. There's a couple of normalization that I have to do so that one asset looks quite similar to the others instead of having different kind of lighting, different shading and stuff like that. You can, if you want, hire an environment artist and pay them to create such a unique thing for you. But what I did pay an artist to do is the ground, because I need the ground to be unique to the game. And combined with the environment, it looks pretty cool. Now look at the walkthrough, fly through video. So there's no shadow and everything like that, because that comes in real time. Now there are a couple of advanced techniques that you can use in regards to lighting and shadowing, so that you don't necessarily spend too much CPU resources when you're running a lot of objects. For example, light baking, where you bake the light into the texture, and it's an automated process. You just have to do it at build time instead of runtime. And you have what is called occlusion culling. You tell the rendering engine, this is where the camera is looking at right now. Don't render all the other objects that's not within the camera. All right, programming. I will touch very little on this. You'll probably be gearing towards scripting rather than programming. But each of these snippet of code is attached to an object. So imagine like archer character, for example, is attached just to the archer, and then the archer guild is attached to the guild, and then the guild manages an army of archer characters. Therefore, the archer character code only is concerned about what the archer does. Very straightforward. Game controller controls the game. Game camera controller controls the game camera. Menu controller controls the menu. But then you also have menu screen. Menu screen controls the screen part of the menu. An example of code, no need to read it. This is what the AI does. It's abstracted out into its own little functions. And this is a shader language. I use a little bit of a custom shader because the way the game looks, it's pretty unlit. It's not affected by lighting so much, but I want it to still be transparent and to cast shadow. The shader that comes with it. As soon as you want shadow, you need shading. I don't want shading, but I want shadow. So do your own custom shaders for it. Next topic is camera.
Is there like an inheritance model in the C# programming, like you talked about the archer characters and the archer guild? The archer guild class prescribe like methods, or does it like some way limit what the archer character is?
Yes. So the base character controls the basic movement, but the archer character overrides some of the, for example, before I attack, I need to stop. Whereas the knight, when I attack, I can move at the same time. Wizard, same thing with archer, any long range character, they need to stop before they make an attack. So that would be overridden in the child class.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Thanks for that question. In Guilds and Glory, the camera, you can move manually, but if you leave it without pressing any camera keyboard keys, then it also rotates by itself, right? So that's the camera mechanic that Guilds and Glory has. That has to be custom programmed. So this just shows you what the camera looks like. This is the gizmo for the camera when it's droning above the army that it's inspecting, observing kind of thing. And with that, combining it with debugging angles, for example, it's pretty easy then to test the game. I've set up a couple of point of views. You can drone over any armies that you want in case you want to debug certain behaviors or anything like that, find out bugs and stuff like that. Or you can go into close-ups like this. UI and HUDs. UI is everything that has nothing to do with the game itself. So it could be your game wrapper, your title screen, menu screen, character selection screen. Head unit display is specifically to do with your game. The health bar, what hit points each character has, and the map. And most likely they will not be interactable. They are just read-only information. Sometimes no HUD can be a really good thing, better than a bad HUD. Sound design. Let me just talk quickly about sound variations. Sound variations is where in Guilds and Glory, for example, you have arrow flying, this kind of sound. And you have many characters doing it at the same time. Imagine if you just use one sound, it will be quite strange. So what we do then is have many takes on the same sound. In this case, I bought a pack that comes with the Aeroflying sounds. And then I use a library called Master Audio. And it allows me to just specify play the sound, and then it will pick a couple of variations depending on how many characters and stuff. That I can also put a limit on how many polyphonic sounds that can play at the same time. So let me just play that again without me talking so you hear the difference. So it's more believable. And then as part of sound design in Glory, I'm using spatial sounds. Yeah, get the idea. I hope you hear the stereo sounds. I'm assuming that you hear the panning between left and right. So spatial sounds using Master Audio. Master Audio is a really cool plugin that I use for Unity. It doesn't come with Unity. I just have to buy it. Play sound in 3D and follow transform. Transform is an object that can move. And then once I give it a move, like the banner that moves, it follows it automatically. So play sound 3 at factor 3, that means it just forgets it. You put the sound there, and then wherever you go, it doesn't follow you anymore. And then play sound obviously just plays something for the UI or anything like that. It's flat, mono, or maybe stereo, but both channels kind of thing. So where can you find sound? I won't talk too much about this. Unity Asset Store has always been the go-to place for me whenever I want to find sounds. And then when you want to edit sounds, then you can use Audacity, which is free as well. So music. So where to find music? Same places. Audio Jungle, I think, is the best thing. Epidemic Sound is the best thing. Artlist, recently I went into it just to check out some stuff. Pretty cool stuff too. But again, always coming back home, Unity Asset Store is the place I could call home for really cool stuff, really high quality stuff. Now, it bears the question then, if you can find a pack of music for like just $30 or sometimes even $10, why would you want to compose your own music? Music is quite different from sound. Sound is like the environment artwork. You use, like a Foley sound. Nobody will ever say, oh, that's exactly the same footsteps that I heard on this game. But music is quite thematic and therefore quite unique to your game. So almost always people know, oh yeah, that's the same music. And that would be embarrassing if you got caught out. When you ask someone to compose original music for you, it can cost between $500 to $2,500. Original composition, it's uniquely yours. You need to test it out as well, whether it fits with unless you have a clear idea on what music you want. But again, problem with pre-made music is other people can use it too. But then the good thing is that some platforms where you buy music, you can license it exclusively. So you say, okay, I want this song, but I don't want anyone else to use it anymore, so I'll pay higher. This is an example. If you do want to compose your own music like me, because it brings me so much joy, just as much joy as I have creating the game, creating the music for it has been an absolute pleasure for me. I'll end it with this slide. This just gives you an example of what the process looks like when you compose music. So each layer, you just record whatever you play. That's where I want to stop, and thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for the comment as well. That's pretty much it, guys.